The metal doors of the council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Catherine Wells stepped inside, her heart beating fast despite her calm expression. Behind her walked Commander Jake Morrison and his security team. They moved carefully, watching everything around them. The council chamber was huge. It stretched upward like a cathedral made of glass and steel. Hundreds of seats curved in semicircles, rising higher and higher. Each section held different alien species. Some were tall and thin like insects. Others were covered in fur or scales. Some floated in tanks of liquid. Catherine had studied them all, but seeing them in person was different. Catherine wore a simple blue suit, the official uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She carried no weapons, just a small tablet with her notes. Jake and his team stayed 3 steps behind her, their eyes constantly moving, looking for threats. They reached their assigned position on the lower level. The human delegation stood alone, surrounded on all sides by species who had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Earth was new here, very new, and not everyone was happy about it. High Counselor Vrek stood at the center of the chamber. He was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with a body that looked like a giant mantis. His compound eyes caught the light and shimmered with rainbow colors. When he spoke, his voice clicked and buzzed, but a small device on his chest translated his words into perfect English. The council recognizes the human delegation. Ambassador Wells, you may speak. Catherine took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her voice was clear and strong. Honored counselors, I come before you representing the people of Earth. We seek full membership in this council. We come in peace, offering friendship and cooperation. Before she could continue, another voice interrupted. It was sharp and cold. You come offering war. The speaker was Counselor Thane, representing the Rexian collective. He looked like a bipedal lizard, covered in dark green scales. His eyes were yellow and fixed on Catherine with obvious dislike. Your species has known nothing but conflict, Thane continued. Your planet's history is written in blood, war after war after war, and now you want to bring that violence here, to our peaceful union. Catherine had expected this. She had prepared for it. We do not deny our past. Earth has seen terrible wars, but we learned from them. For the last 100 years, our world has been united and peaceful. We have grown beyond our violent history. 100 years, Thane said with what might have been a laugh. My species has known peace for 10,000 years. Your century means nothing. Other counselors began to speak. Some defended humanity. Others joined Thane in questioning whether Earth was ready. The debate went on for hours. Catherine answered every question with patience and facts. She never raised her voice. She never showed anger. Jake watched from behind her. He was not interested in the debate. He was watching the other delegations, studying their body language, their positions. Something felt wrong. The Vrexians seemed too confident, too prepared. This was supposed to be a formal debate, but it felt like a trap. His eyes found a group of Vrexian military officers standing near the exit. They were watching the humans with intense focus, not curiosity, assessment, like soldiers studying a target. When the session finally ended, the humans returned to their ship. The Horizon was docked at the station, a sleek diplomatic vessel designed to impress. Inside, Catherine collapsed into a chair in her office. Jake poured her a glass of water. That went about as well as expected, she said tiredly. They were ready for every argument, Jake replied. Every point you made, they had a counter ready, like they had been practicing. Catherine nodded. The Vrexians want us rejected. The question is why. Fear, Jake said simply. They are afraid of what we represent. Change, new ideas, competition. Or they are planning something, Catherine said. She looked at Jake carefully. You saw something today. I could tell. Jake told her about the Vrexian military officers, about how they watched the human delegation, about the feeling that something was about to happen. They will try something tomorrow, Jake said. I am sure of it. What can they do? This is a neutral station. There are rules. Rules only matter if people follow them. Far across the station, in a secure Vrexian facility, Commander Thane met with his military team. The room was dark except for a holographic display showing the council chamber. "Tomorrow, we will show the council what humans truly are," Thane said to his officers. "We will create an incident, make it appear the humans started a fight. The council will see their violent nature firsthand." One of his officers, a younger Vrexian named Krell, shifted uncomfortably. "What if this goes wrong? What if they do not react as we expect?" Thane's lipless mouth curved slightly. "Then we adapt. Either way, the humans will be exposed as the primitives they are. Either they will attack our officer and prove they are violent, or they will do nothing and prove they are weak. We cannot lose." Krell nodded, but did not look convinced. He had been given his orders. Tomorrow he would pretend to be drunk. He would approach the human delegation and cause a scene. He would pull a fake weapon. The humans would react, and cameras would capture everything. It was a simple plan. A good plan. But something about it bothered Krell. He remembered watching the human ambassador speak today. She had been patient, respectful. She had not insulted anyone, even when insulted herself. Was this really the behavior of a violent species? But orders were orders. Krell would do his duty. Back aboard the Horizon, Catherine could not sleep. She stood in the observation deck looking out at the station. It was beautiful, a city in space, with lights stretching in every direction. Thousands of species lived here together. Somehow they made it work. Could humans really be part of this? Or were the Vrexians right? Was Earth too young, too violent, too different? Jake found her there an hour later. He brought 2 cups of coffee, a taste of home. "You should rest," he said, handing her a cup. "I keep thinking about what Thane said, about our history. He is not wrong, Jake. We have been terrible to each other." "We have also been amazing to each other," Jake replied. "Yes, we fought wars, but we also built cities, created art, explored, discovered, helped each other through disasters. Every species has darkness in its past. The question is what we do with our future." Catherine smiled slightly. "When did you become a philosopher?" "I have always been one. You just never asked." They stood together in comfortable silence, drinking coffee and watching the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests. But tonight, they could rest. Tomorrow, everything would change. The second day of discussions began badly. During the night, someone had spread rumors through the station. People whispered that humans had been caught spying. Others said the human ship carried illegal weapons. None of it was true, but truth did not matter as much as gossip. Catherine walked into the council chamber with her head high, ignoring the stares. Jake had doubled her security escort. She had argued against it, saying it made them look afraid. But Jake insisted, and she trusted his instincts. The morning session was brutal. One counselor after another stood to question humanity's intentions. They brought up old wars from Earth's history. They questioned whether humans could be trusted. They asked if 100 years of peace was really enough. Catherine answered every question calmly. She explained how Earth had changed. She talked about the united government, the end of weapons of mass destruction, the focus on exploration instead of conquest. But she could feel the mood turning against her. Then, during a short break, it happened. A Vrexian junior officer stumbled into the area where the humans stood. He was young, wearing a military uniform that looked slightly disheveled. He shouted something in his own language, words that the translators struggled to process. His movements were jerky, uncontrolled. He appeared drunk. Lieutenant Greg Hamilton, head of Catherine's security team, stepped forward calmly. "Sir, you need to leave this area," the Vrexian shouted again, louder this time. Then his hand went to his belt and pulled out what looked like a weapon. The device was small but clearly dangerous, with a glowing energy cell visible on its side. Greg moved without thinking. His training took over. In one smooth motion, he grabbed the Vrexian's arm, twisted it, and removed the weapon. The Vrexian fell to the ground, crying out as if injured. The chamber exploded into chaos. "Attack!" Thane roared, his voice cutting through the confusion. The humans have attacked a member of this council without cause. This is exactly what we warned you about. Counselors jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. The translation systems could not keep up. Security forces from multiple species rushed toward the scene, but Jake was already moving. He had seen something wrong immediately. The whole incident felt staged, too perfect. He pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the fallen Vrexian, examining him carefully. The weapon lay on the ground nearby.
Jake picked it up and instantly knew.
It was not loaded. There was no power cell inside. It was a prop, a fake designed to look dangerous but completely harmless. "This is a setup," Jake called out, holding up the empty weapon. "Look at this. No power source." This was planned. Thane was ready with his response. Of course the humans would claim deception. They have probably tampered with our security systems. This is their nature. Lies and violence. High Counselor Vrex raised his arms and a loud tone rang through the chamber. It was painful to human ears, like feedback from a speaker. Everyone fell silent. "This session is ended," Vrex announced. "The human delegation will return to their ship immediately. There will be a full investigation before we continue." Security officers, not human ones, escorted Catherine and her team out of the chamber. Jake looked back once and saw Thane. The Vrexian counselor was not upset or angry. He looked satisfied, pleased. He had gotten exactly what he wanted. Back aboard the Horizon, the mood was dark. Catherine paced her office while Jake reviewed every recording they had of the incident. "They planned this perfectly," Catherine said. "Now we look either violent or like liars. Maybe both." "We have to prove what really happened," Jake replied, his eyes fixed on the screens. "How?" "Thane says we corrupted the security systems. Any evidence we present will be questioned." Jake froze the video at a specific moment. He zoomed in on the Vrexian officer's face, the one who had pretended to attack them. For just a fraction of a second, the officer's expression showed something revealing. Not anger, not drunken rage, fear. He was scared, Jake said. Look at his eyes. He did not want to do this. So what? He still did it. Which means he was following orders. And if he was following orders, maybe he can be convinced to tell the truth. Catherine stared at him. "You want to find him? Talk to him." "Yes." "Jake, he will be surrounded by Vrexian security. You cannot just walk up and have a conversation. Then I will have to be creative." Greg Hamilton volunteered immediately when Jake explained the plan. "I was the one who took the weapon from him. If anyone should go, it is me." They spent hours studying maps of the station. The crossroads was old, built and rebuilt over centuries. There were maintenance tunnels, service corridors, forgotten spaces between the walls, places where someone could move unseen if they knew where to look. At 3 a.m, station time, Greg and 3 other Marines left the Horizon through a waste disposal port. They wore dark clothes with no identification. They carried no weapons except small stunners for emergencies. Jake guided them through his computer, watching their progress on security feeds he had carefully accessed. "Turn left at the next junction. There is a patrol coming." "Wait 30 seconds. They pressed against the cold walls as shadows moved past. When the way was clear, they continued deeper into the station, heading toward the Vrexian section. The Vrexian junior officer, Krell, sat alone in a small room. He had been there since the incident, waiting for orders. The plan had worked perfectly, according to Commander Thane. The humans had been exposed. Soon they would be expelled from Council space. But Krell felt no joy. He kept remembering the moment when the human security officer had disarmed him. The human could have hurt him, could have broken his arm or worse. But the motion had been controlled, professional, designed to remove the threat without causing unnecessary harm. That was not the action of a violent species. That was discipline. When the ventilation grate above him quietly opened, Krell's first thought was to call for help. But something stopped him. Curiosity, perhaps, or guilt. A human dropped silently into the room. It was the same one from earlier, the security officer. He held his hands out, showing they were empty. "I am not here to hurt you," Greg said quietly. "I am here because I think you are not a bad person. You were following orders." Krell's translator processed the words slowly. "You should not be here. If they find you, there will be trouble. I know, but I needed to talk to you." Greg sat down slowly, making no threatening moves. "That weapon was not real. You were not drunk. Someone ordered you to do this." Krell said nothing for a long moment. Then very quietly he spoke. "Commander Thane, He said it was necessary to protect the collective from human aggression. Do we seem aggressive to you? Krell looked at this human who had every reason to be angry, but instead sat and talked like they were equals. No, you seem determined, but not aggressive. Will you tell the council the truth? I cannot. My family depends on my position. If I disobey, they will destroy my career. My life. Greg nodded slowly. He understood loyalty. He understood fear. Let me ask you something. What kind of galaxy do you want to live in? One where truth matters or one where it does not? Before Krell could answer, alarms began to wail throughout the section. They had been discovered. Go, Krell said urgently. They are coming for you. Greg stood and moved toward the ventilation grate. But he paused and looked back. My people have a saying. The truth will set you free. Think about it. He disappeared into the ventilation system just as Vrexian guards burst through the door. Commander Thane called an emergency session of the council the next morning. He was angry, or at least he appeared angry. He spoke loudly about human soldiers breaking into Vrexian territory, about how this proved everything he had been saying. They sent commandos into our secure areas, Thane declared, his scaled hand striking the podium. This is an act of war. The humans cannot be trusted. They must be expelled from council space immediately. Catherine stood in the center of the chamber, feeling more alone than ever before. Around her, counselors whispered to each other. Some looked at her with sympathy. Most looked at her with suspicion or anger. We were investigating, Catherine said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. Your officer was ordered to create a false incident. We have proof. Proof? Thane hissed. You have nothing. No evidence. No witnesses. Only your word against ours. And your word, Ambassador, means very little right now. He was right. Everything had been planned perfectly. The fake weapon had disappeared. The security footage could be questioned. And Krell, the young officer, was locked away where no one could reach him. The vote was scheduled for the next day. Early estimates said humanity would lose badly. Some species were even calling for human ships to be banned from council space entirely. Aboard the Horizon, Jake stared at tactical displays. The Vrexian fleet had moved closer to the station. 12 warships, all heavily armed. If the vote went badly, the humans might not get time to leave peacefully. We could fight our way out, Greg suggested, though his tone said he knew it was a terrible idea. Against 12 warships? Jake shook his head. We would be destroyed in minutes. So we just accept defeat? No, Catherine said, entering the bridge. We do what humans have always done when everything seems lost. We tell the truth, loudly. She had spent the past hours preparing. Now she was ready. Without asking permission from anyone, she broadcast a message across the entire station. Every screen, every communication device, every public display suddenly showed her face. My name is Catherine Wells, she began. I represent the people of Earth. Tomorrow, the Council will vote to expel humanity from this community of worlds. They will do so because of lies and manipulation. But I want to tell you something. Not about politics. Not about rules. About us, she spoke for 20 minutes. She talked about Earth's history, not hiding the terrible parts, the wars, the weapons, the times humans had been cruel to each other. But she also talked about how Earth had changed, how they chose to stop fighting and start building, how they reached for the stars not to conquer but to learn. We are not perfect, Catherine said. We make mistakes. We are still learning. But we never stop trying. And now we stand before you asking not for special treatment but for a chance. A chance to prove that growth matters, that change is possible, that trying counts for something. She paused, looking directly into the camera. If you reject us, you send a message to every young species in the galaxy. You say that the past cannot be forgiven, that change does not matter, that hope is not enough. Is that the galaxy you want? The broadcast ended. Catherine sat down, suddenly exhausted. She had said everything she could say. Now they could only wait. In his quarters, Krell watched the human ambassador's words. He had been confined there since the incident with the human commandos. Guards stood outside his door. Commander Thane had made it clear that Krell was not to speak to anyone, but Krell could not stop thinking about what the human soldier had said. What kind of galaxy do you want to live in? He thought about Commander Thane's plan, the lies, the manipulation, the willingness to destroy another species' future for political advantage. Was this honor? Was this the Vrexian way? Krell had been raised to believe in truth, in duty. in doing what was right even when it was difficult. Somewhere along the way he had forgotten those lessons. He had followed orders without questioning them. The human ambassador was right. Change was possible, but only if people were brave enough to make it happen. Krell made his decision. The next morning, the council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled. Reporters from dozens of species crowded the observation areas. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Catherine entered with Jake and her security team. She wore the same simple blue uniform. She carried herself with dignity, even though she expected to lose. High Counselor Vrex called the session to order. We are here to vote on the human petition for membership. Before we begin, does anyone wish to speak? Thane stood immediately. The choice is clear. The humans have shown their true nature, violence, deception. They do not belong here. Other counselors spoke. Some defended humanity. Most did not. Catherine listened to them all, her face calm, accepting whatever would come. Then a door at the side of the chamber opened. A young Vrexian officer walked in. He wore his military uniform, but he walked without guards. Without permission, it was Krell. I have something to say, Krell announced, his voice shaking but determined. Thane went rigid in his seat. You are out of order. Guards, remove him. But High Counselor Vrex raised one delicate limb. Let him speak. Krell walked to the center of the chamber. He looked small there, surrounded by powerful counselors from across the galaxy. But his voice was steady as he told the truth. He explained Commander Thane's plan. The fake weapon, the staged incident, the orders to make humans appear violent. Every detail holding nothing back. The chamber erupted into shouting. Multiple species yelled at once. Thane tried to deny everything, but too many pieces fit together. The empty weapon, the convenient timing. The Rexian fleet positioning itself for conflict. These are serious accusations, High Counselor Vrex said, his compound eyes reflecting the chaos below. Commander Thane, you will be detained while we investigate. Rexian security, looking uncomfortable, took their own commander into custody. Thane struggled and shouted, but they removed him from the chamber. The council debated for hours after that. Some species argued that Thane's deception proved humanity was right to investigate. Others said the incident, regardless of who started it, showed the dangers of accepting humans. Catherine did not speak again. She had said everything she needed to say. Now the decision was out of her hands. Finally, High Counselor Vrex called for the vote. All those in favor of accepting humanity as full members of the Galactic Council? Catherine watched the display board as numbers appeared. 8 votes in favor. All those opposed? 7 votes against. Abstaining? 2 species chose not to vote. For a moment, no one moved. Then Vrex spoke again. The petition is accepted. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The chamber filled with mixed reactions. Some species cheered. Others protested loudly. Catherine closed her eyes and took a deep breath. They had done it. Against all odds, they had done it. Jake put a hand on her shoulder. We won. No, Catherine said, opening her eyes. We survived. Now the real work begins. She was right. This was not an ending. It was barely a beginning. Humanity had earned a seat at the table, but now they had to prove they deserved to keep it. There would be challenges ahead, mistakes, setbacks. But for now, for this moment, they had hope. 3 weeks passed after the vote. The excitement faded quickly, replaced by the grinding reality of galactic politics. Humanity had been accepted, but the word provisional still hung over them like a dark cloud. They were members, but not fully trusted. They were watched constantly, judged by standards no other species faced. Catherine sat in her new office on the Crossroads station, reading reports. The news was not good. Several council species had imposed trade restrictions on human goods. The Vrexian collective, embarrassed by Thane's exposure, had become openly hostile. And now there were new problems. Jake entered without knocking. His face was grim. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The Syndicate. Catherine felt her stomach drop. The Syndicate was not a government or a species. It was a loose alliance of pirates and criminals from dozens of different worlds. They operated in the empty spaces between Council territory, raiding ships and attacking colonies. The Council had been fighting them for decades with little success. What have they done? 3 human freighters attacked in the past week, all carrying medical supplies to our colony on New Terra. The crews were taken hostage. Catherine stood up quickly. Ransom demands? That is the strange part. No demands. They're just holding our people. Catherine understood immediately. They are waiting to see how we respond. Yes, and the council is watching too. If we negotiate, we look weak. If we do nothing, we abandon our people. But if we use military force to rescue them, we prove the Vrexians were right about us, that we are violent. Catherine sat back down heavily. It is a perfect trap. Far across the station, in a quiet cafe, Greg Hamilton met with Krell. The Vrexian had requested asylum with the Kelthani Union after testifying against his commander. The Kelthani had agreed, probably more to embarrass the Vrexian collective than out of kindness. How are they treating you? Greg asked. Krell's translator conveyed his clicking speech. Well enough. The Kelthani are not warm, but they are fair. I have work. A place to live. It is more than I expected. Greg raised his glass. To new beginnings. Krell touched his own glass to Greg's. To truth. They sat quietly for a moment. Then Krell leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting concern. There is something you should know. The attacks on your shipping. I have heard rumors. The Syndicate did not plan this alone. What do you mean? Someone on the council is supporting them. Providing information. Perhaps weapons. I do not know who. But this is not random piracy. This is political. Greg got the information to Catherine within an hour. A council member was secretly backing pirate attacks on human vessels. It was an act of war, but without proof, accusations would only make humanity look paranoid and unstable. We need evidence, Jake said, studying a star map that showed where the attacks had happened. And we need to rescue our people. A new voice spoke from the doorway. I might have a solution, but you will not like it. Commander Lisa Park entered the room. She commanded the UNS Falcon, a smaller ship than the Horizon built for speed and stealth rather than diplomacy. Her plan was risky. The Falcon would disguise itself as a civilian freighter and travel the same routes as the attacked ships. When the Syndicate struck, the Falcon would allow itself to be captured. The crew would become hostages along with the others. But we will have a tracking beacon, Lisa explained, and a team hidden in the cargo bay. Once we are inside their base, we gather evidence. Find out who is really running this operation. Then we rescue everyone. Too dangerous, Catherine said immediately. If they discover the deception, all our people will be killed. Maybe, but every alternative is worse. Lisa looked at Jake. You know I am right. Jake studied the plan carefully. There were many ways it could fail. But doing nothing meant abandoning human crews to an unknown fate. And letting the conspiracy continue meant more attacks, more deaths. I am going with you, Jake said. Jake, no. Catherine, this is not negotiable. If we are going to do this, we need someone who can make command decisions in the field. Catherine wanted to argue more, but she knew he was right. 2 days later, the Falcon, now called the Merchant Hope, left the station on a course toward New Terra. They did not wait long. On the third day, sensors detected 4 ships moving to intercept. They were fast and heavily armed. Syndicate raiders, everyone ready? Lisa asked her crew. Remember, we are scared civilian traders, not military. She cut the engines as planned. The raiders closed in quickly, weapons locked on the Falcon. Their boarding party came aboard roughly, shouting in multiple languages, waving weapons around. Their leader was huge, a creature with 6 arms and gray mottled skin. It surveyed the crew with obvious contempt. More humans, good. The cells are hungry for more guests. They were transported to a hidden base inside an asteroid field. The base was old and ugly, cobbled together from stolen parts and scavenged equipment. The human crews were thrown into holding cells with the others who had been captured earlier. Jake counted quickly. 37 humans total, all alive. That was good. Manageable. As soon as the guards left, Jake moved to examine the cell door. The lock was sophisticated but not impossible. While he worked, he whispered to Lisa, "Get everyone ready. When I open this, we move fast." Looking for this? Jake turned to see a young woman in the next cell holding what looked like a guard's access key. She was maybe 30 years old with sharp eyes and a confident expression that seemed out of place for a hostage. "Who are you?" "Kelly Grant. I was chief engineer on the first ship they captured. Been picking locks since I was a kid." She tossed the key through the bars to Jake. But here is the thing, Commander Morrison. I do not think we should escape. Not yet. Jake caught the key, surprised she knew his name. Explain quickly. Because whoever is running this operation visited 3 days ago. I saw them meeting with the syndicate leaders, and I can identify them. This changed everything. Who was it? Kelly's expression turned serious. Counselor Vrenth of the Moth Hierarchy, one of the species that abstained in your membership vote. The Moths, telepathic, mysterious, supposedly neutral. If they were behind this, it meant something bigger was happening. The Moths did not act without careful planning. We need proof, Jake said. Kelly produced a small device from her pocket. Engineering multi-tool. Has a camera function if you know how to modify the sensors. I recorded Vrenth's entire visit. But if we escape now, they will destroy this base and all the evidence. Jake thought quickly. His hidden team aboard the Falcon should be gathering their own intelligence from the Raider ships. If they could coordinate, hit everything at once. How long can you keep everyone safe here? Kelly looked at the other prisoners. They were scared but holding together. As long as necessary. Then we wait. But be ready to move fast when I give the signal. Over the next 2 days, Jake made contact with his hidden team using covert communication systems built into his uniform. They confirmed Kelly's information. The Moths were backing the syndicate. But there was more. 3 other council species were involved, working together in secret to force humanity out of the council. Jake sent all the evidence to Catherine. She reviewed it with growing horror. 2 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The Crossroads station had become Catherine's second home, though she still missed Earth sometimes. The view from her office showed the vast station stretching in all directions, a city in space where thousands of species lived and worked together. The reforms had passed eventually. Not everything Catherine wanted, but enough to make a difference. The council now had clearer rules about transparency and accountability. New members received support instead of suspicion. Disputes were resolved through established processes instead of shadow politics. It had not been easy. Many long debates, many compromises, many late nights when Catherine wondered if any of it mattered. But slowly things improved. Jake had been promoted to admiral. He now commanded a small fleet of ships dedicated to protecting trade routes and keeping peace in frontier regions. His ships had become known throughout council space, not for their weapons but for their diplomacy. When conflicts arose, Admiral Morrison's fleet arrived to mediate instead of fight. We are becoming the galaxy's peacekeepers, Jake told Catherine during one of his visits to the station. How did that happen? We proved we could fight, so we do not have to, Catherine replied. That is real strength. It was true. Other species respected humanity now, not because humans were the most powerful or advanced, but because they had shown restraint. They chose negotiation over violence, even when violence would have been easier. Greg Hamilton had taken a new position training security forces from multiple species. He taught them not just combat techniques, but de-escalation, cultural awareness, ethical decision-making. His classes were always full with students from dozens of different worlds. Krell sometimes visited Greg's classes as a guest speaker. He told his story of choosing truth over orders, of finding the courage to do what was right instead of what was easy. The students listened with respect, learning from both the human and the Vrexian. You changed my life, Krell told Greg after one class. I was going to be just another soldier following orders. Now I teach others to think for themselves. You changed your own life, Greg corrected. I just asked a question. Kelly Grant had become a leader on New Terra. The colony thrived under her management, growing from a few hundred settlers to several thousand. More species joined over time. The Kelthany, of course, but also others. The colony became a model for cooperation, showing what was possible when different peoples chose to work together. Catherine visited New Terra once. She walked through streets where humans and aliens lived side by side. She saw children of different species playing together, learning each other's languages. She saw couples of mixed species holding hands. She saw the future. This is what we were fighting for, she told Kelly. Not council seats or political victories. This. Kelly smiled. We just did the work. You made it possible. We all did. The Vrexian Collective had changed leadership after the scandal. The new government was more open, more willing to engage with other species. They reached out to humanity, offering apologies for Thane's actions and proposing trade agreements. Catherine met with the new Vrexian ambassador, a thoughtful female named Sarah. They talked for hours about their respective worlds, their histories, their hopes. By the end, they had drafted a preliminary agreement that would benefit both species. "Your people are remarkable," Sarah said. "You joined the council at our worst moment and somehow made us better." "You made yourselves better," Catherine replied. "You chose new leadership. You chose change. Inspired by your example, the moth hierarchy was slower to change. They were a proud species, ancient and powerful. The exposure of Councillor Vrenth had deeply embarrassed them. For a long time they isolated themselves, speaking only when necessary in council sessions. But gradually they too began to engage. A new moth councillor, younger and more progressive, reached out to Catherine. They discussed philosophy and ethics, finding unexpected common ground. The moths had always believed in telepathic honesty, truth shared mind to mind. Catherine's insistence on transparency resonated with their deepest values. "Perhaps we misjudged your species," the moth counselor admitted during one conversation. "We saw your history of violence and assumed you would always be violent. We did not see your capacity for growth." "We did not see it ourselves sometimes," Catherine said. "But growth is possible for anyone willing to try." The council itself had evolved. More young species were being invited to join. The process was still careful, still thorough, but no longer designed to exclude. The galaxy was changing, becoming more open and interconnected. Piracy still existed, of course. The syndicate had not disappeared. But cooperation between council species made the raiders' work more difficult. Joint patrols protected trade routes. Shared intelligence prevented attacks. The galaxy was becoming safer, one system at a time. Catherine stood in the council chamber once more, preparing to give a speech. It was the anniversary of humanity's acceptance, and she had been asked to address the entire council. She looked at the assembled species, remembering her first time here, how alone she had felt, how uncertain. She felt neither alone nor uncertain now. 2 years ago, I stood before you asking for a chance, Catherine began. A chance to prove that humanity could be part of this community, that we could learn from our mistakes and become something better. She paused, looking around the chamber. You gave us that chance, and in return we have tried our best to be worthy of it. But I want to say something important today. This journey has not been one-sided. We came here thinking we would learn from you, and we have. But we also realize something. You have learned from us too. Our struggles with violence, with unity, with growth, these are not unique to humanity. Every species here has faced similar challenges. The difference is that our struggles are recent. We remember them, and maybe that is valuable. Maybe remembering what it is like to fail helps us avoid future failures. Maybe acknowledging our imperfections makes us stronger, not weaker. The chamber was silent, every translator working to convey her words accurately. So today, on this anniversary, I want to thank you, not just for accepting humanity, but for being willing to change, for being willing to examine your own systems and find them lacking, for choosing growth over comfort. The Council is not perfect, neither are we, but together, we are building something better than what we had before, and that is worth celebrating. The applause started with the Kelthani and spread through the chamber. Not every species joined in, but most did. It was acceptance, real and earned. After the session, Jake found Catherine in her office. She was staring at her terminal, reading reports, always working. You should rest, he said. You gave a good speech. There is still so much to do. There will always be more to do. That is not an excuse to never stop. Catherine smiled and closed her terminal. When did you become so wise? I learned from the best. They stood together at the window looking out at the station. Somewhere out there, human ships were protecting trade routes. Human colonies were growing and thriving. Human diplomats were building relationships with species from across the galaxy. Do you ever think about how unlikely this all was? Catherine asked. 100 years ago, Earth was still divided. 200 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves, and now we are here. Makes you wonder what we will accomplish in another 100 years. Or another 1,000. Jake smiled. One step at a time, Ambassador. Admiral. They stood in comfortable silence, two friends who had weathered storms together, watching the future unfold. Far below the station, a small ship was arriving. It carried new ambassadors from a species that had just been contacted. They were nervous, uncertain, wondering if they belonged in this vast galactic community. Catherine would meet them tomorrow. She would welcome them, guide them, share what humanity had learned, and the cycle would continue, each species helping the next, building a galaxy where cooperation mattered more than conquest. It was not the ending anyone had expected when Earth first reached for the stars, but it was the right ending, the hopeful ending. And for humanity, holding its breath through every challenge, it was just the beginning. "We cannot just expose them," Catherine said over the secure communication channel. "They will claim the evidence is fake. Start investigations that take years. By then, more people will die." "Then we force their hand," Jake replied from his cell in the asteroid base. "We escape loudly, make enough noise that the council has to investigate. And we make sure Kelly's footage reaches every news network before they can control the story." Catherine understood what he meant. They needed to act quickly and decisively, show strength without appearing aggressive. It was a difficult balance, but necessary. The breakout was planned for the next day. Jake's team would hit the base from inside while Lisa's team aboard the Falcon disabled the Syndicate ships. Caught between two forces, the raiders would have no choice but to surrender. At exactly midnight station time, Jake gave the signal. He used Kelly's stolen key to open the cell doors. The prisoners moved quickly and quietly, following the plan Jake had explained earlier. At the same moment, Lisa's hidden team emerged from the Falcon's cargo bay. They had been there for days, waiting in uncomfortable silence. Now they moved through the Syndicate ships, sabotaging engines and weapon systems. The base alarms began to wail. Syndicate guards rushed to respond, but they were confused. Attacks were coming from multiple directions. The prisoners were loose. The ships were going dark. Jake led the hostages toward the docking bay where the Falcon waited. They encountered resistance, but Jake's team was better trained, better prepared. The fighting was brief and controlled. No one was killed, but several raiders were left unconscious on the floor. Kelly ran beside Jake, still clutching her device with the recorded evidence. "We need to get this out immediately. If they capture us again, they will destroy it." "Already planned," Jake assured her. "As soon as we are aboard the Falcon, we transmit to every news network we can reach." They reached the docking bay. The Falcon's engines were already warming up. Lisa stood at the airlock counting prisoners as they boarded. Come on. We do not have much time." The last prisoner was barely aboard when Syndicate reinforcements arrived. But by then, the Falcon was sealing its doors and pulling away from the base. Energy weapons fired at them, but the ship's shields held. "We are clear," Lisa announced, transmitting the evidence now. Kelly's footage went out across every communication channel. Within minutes, it was playing on news networks throughout Council space. The image was clear. Counselor Vrenth of the Moth Hierarchy meeting with Syndicate leaders, providing coordinates of human shipping routes, discussing payment for attacks. The political explosion was immediate. Every major news service in the galaxy picked up the story. The Moth Hierarchy tried to deny everything, claiming the footage was fabricated, but technical analysis proved it was genuine. The metadata was correct. The image signatures were authentic. Within 6 hours, Counselor Vrenth was forced to resign. Within a day, 3 other counselors implicated in the conspiracy also stepped down. The Shadow Coalition collapsed, but the damage went deeper than a few resignations. The scandal shook the entire council. Species that had trusted each other for millennia suddenly questioned everything. Old alliances weakened. New factions formed. The humans, meant to be the weak link, had instead exposed corruption at the heart of galactic government. Catherine watched the news reports from her office. She should have felt victorious. They had proven their worth, exposed their enemies, rescued their people, but instead she felt tired and worried. "We have made powerful enemies," she said to Jake when he returned to the station. "We also made allies," he pointed out. Several species, especially the Kelthani, had publicly praised humanity's actions, and we proved we belong here. At what cost? Look at the council now. Fractured, suspicious, we did that. No, they did that to themselves. We just shined a light on it. Jake was right, but it did not make Catherine feel better. The council she had wanted to join was not what she had imagined. It was not a perfect union of enlightened species. It was messy and political and sometimes corrupt, just like human governments had been. Maybe that was the real lesson. There were no perfect civilizations. Everyone was trying their best and sometimes failing. The difference was whether you kept trying or gave up. Catherine made her decision. She would not give up. Over the following weeks, she began reaching out to other counselors, not to form her own coalition or seek revenge, but to build bridges, to find common ground, to repair some of the damage. It was slow work. Many species were still suspicious of humanity. Others were dealing with their own internal problems caused by the scandal. But slowly, carefully, Catherine made progress. She met with Counselor Thera of the Kelthani Union. Thera was old and wise, with silver fur and eyes that seemed to see through pretense. "You have caused quite a disruption, Ambassador," Thera said, though her tone was not angry. "The council will never be the same. I am sorry for that. Do not be. Change was necessary. We had become too comfortable, too certain of our own righteousness." Thera paused. "Your species has a valuable perspective. You remember what it is like to fail, to be imperfect. We had forgotten. What happens now? Now we rebuild. Better this time. More honest." Thera looked at Catherine carefully. "But it will require leadership. Are you prepared for that responsibility?" Catherine thought about all the humans depending on her. All the challenges ahead. All the ways she could fail. "I have to be." Greg Hamilton visited Krell again. The Vrexian looked better now, more settled in his new life with the Kelthani. "I heard about the rescue," Krell said. "You did well." "We learned from the best," Greg replied. "You showed us that speaking truth matters more than following orders. I only did what any honorable being should do. That is not as common as you think." They talked for a while about small things. Life on the station, work, the future. Then Krell asked a question that had been bothering him. "Do you think we made the galaxy better? Or just different?" Greg considered carefully before answering. "I think we made it more honest. Whether that is better depends on what people do with the truth." Far across the galaxy, on the human colony of New Terra, Kelly Grant looked up at the stars. She had been offered a position on the horizon, working with Catherine's team. But she had declined. Her place was here, building something new. The colony was growing. More ships arrived every week bringing supplies and settlers. Humans and Kelthani worked side by side, sharing knowledge and techniques. It was not perfect. There were disagreements and misunderstandings. But they were making it work. That was the real victory, Kelly thought. Not the dramatic rescues or political victories, but the daily choice to cooperate instead of compete, to build instead of destroy. She returned to her work on the fusion plant. There was much to do, but for the first time since leaving Earth, Kelly felt hopeful about the future. Back on the Crossroads station, Catherine prepared for another council session. This one would be different. Not about humanity's membership, but about reforms to make the council stronger and more transparent. It would be a difficult debate. Many species resisted change, but Catherine had learned something important over the past months. Difficulty did not mean impossible, and trying mattered even when success was not guaranteed. As she walked toward the council chamber, Jake fell into step beside her. "Ready for another fight?" he asked. Catherine smiled slightly. "Always."